Why hello there! My name is Jakejames Lugo, and welcome to the channel where you'll find some of the most fair and honest game reviews out here.
Hello there.
And finally, we get to sit down and talk about Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. I've been dying to discuss this game with you guys for a while in this review, and there is just so much to unpack with this. I've been teasing it for quite a bit, but now we're finally going to talk about this. And what the big thing is for me personally is that I never fully finished the original KOTOR on the original Xbox. So all of this is like new territory for me, and as an aficionado of Star Wars games, and also with the remake coming down the line, this is now the perfect time to talk about Knights of the Old Republic. Believe it or not, there was a time before the craziness we see so often with the Star Wars community nowadays. There was once a great calm within the fandom. Before the dark times. Before the, well, you know. During those days, we had so many stories that were part of what we call the extended universe. These were events that happened within the Star Wars galaxy, but have very little to do with any of the movies. One major release within this was a game made by BioWare for the original Xbox, which had a significant impact on role-playing games as a whole. Many consider it to be one of the best in the genre, and debatably, one of the most important for the Xbox as well.
Impressive. Most impressive.
Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic was released in July of 2003. It came out first on the Xbox, and was later ported to the PC. The game has since come out on mobile devices, and most recently the Nintendo Switch. That's the version that I played for this review, since it's the most current version of the original KOTOR, before the remake comes out. So what's so special about this game? People talk about it so much, so why is that? Knights of the Old Republic takes place about 4,000 years before the events of the first Star Wars movie, during the reign of the Galactic Republic and focusing on the old war between the Jedi and the Sith. The evil Darth Malak leads an assault on the Republic while searching for a powerful device known as the Starforge. You are a character with amnesia, who finds themselves thrown into the middle of a clash between the Jedi Order and the Sith. After some twists and turns, you end up on the planet Taurus and link up with a soldier named Carth Onasi, who eventually helps you rescue a Jedi Knight named Bastila Shan. Who she is and how she's tied into your origins are a mystery that slowly unfolds. There's a ton of details that I'm glancing over, but eventually, you pilot a ship called the Ebon Hawk and take refuge at the Jedi Academy on Dantooine. The game then really opens up as your character and an ensemble of allies you find are tasked with finding the star maps that reveal the location of the Starforge, all the while training to become a Jedi Knight to defeat Darth Malak and the Sith. If you can't already tell, this is a very meaty RPG with a lot of story to follow, characters to interact with, locations to explore, and even more beyond that.
Good to see you up instead of thrashing about in your sleep. You must have been having one hell of a nightmare. I was wondering if you were ever going to wake up. I'm Carth, one of the Republic soldiers from the Aspyr. I was with you on the escape pod. Do you remember?
Now I know there is so much you could talk about with just the story alone with this game, and I'm not going to cover all of it. I'm just going to touch on a few points that really resonated with me, and I will get a little bit spoilerish, but really the big plot twist that happens in this game has been out there for so long, and if you know anything about the KOTOR remake coming out, you already were probably spoiled at this point. I will say that the big twist with Revan being Darth Revan, your character that's going through this entire journey, involved with Bastila, the Jedi Order, and the Sith, I think it's awesome. I think it's really cool. It's clever how they kind of interweave like little things here and there, and they foreshadow it as you get closer to the middle and later parts of the game. And personally, for me, I think this is one of the better written Star Wars storylines for any Star Wars related media, especially in video game form. On top of that, I actually like a lot of the minor characters that you run into, even though I don't feel like they're as memorable or as really resonating or impactful as what you get with some of the bigger plot lines here with Revan, Malak, Bastila. I still like Mission, I still like all the other like allies that you run into, and seeing their little stories here and there that you could help out depending on whether you're the light side or the dark side. That type of stuff is awesome, and it's great for any RPG, especially one built by BioWare. And because of that, we get to see a lot of the different races from the Star Wars galaxy, not just a few here and there. We literally get a cavalcade of different races that you can interact with for various reasons. And for a role-playing game, especially one that's so vast that takes place in this type of universe, I think it works out perfectly. This is like a match made in heaven when it comes to how much you could actually do and how much stuff you could actually come across with not only just like the deep lore and like your impact on like everything that's going on around you. This stuff is awesome, and it leads to some awesome, interesting, and very clever storylines. But still, that big storyline, like the main overarching arc with the Starforge and all this other stuff with the Jedi and the Sith, that's really the highlight of the show, and it really hits home. I should also mention too, very briefly, that there are echoes of certain elements from the original Star Wars trilogy and the prequels that you do see in some of the planets that you explore. More specifically Tatooine, because again, it's Tatooine. Even though there's no Mos Eisley, you still have Anchorhead, or Anchorhead, whatever it's called, and you see little elements that are really kind of, reminiscent or inspired by what we got in the original Star Wars movies. So there's stuff that's familiar there, but it's still very different because of the time frame that this game takes place. Alright, I know I could talk about this like all day when it comes to the story because I think it's really good, and if you're a big RPG fan, I think you're going to like it. But we're going to talk about gameplay now because there's a lot to unpack with just this as well. Like, there's so much you could talk about with Knights of the Old Republic. But let's start off first with the combat. Before I get deep into what it's like to traverse the galaxy within Knights of the Old Republic, let me say that the combat is not as bad as you might think.
I have a bad feeling about this.
I have a bad feeling about this.
I've got a bad feeling about this.
I have a bad feeling about this.
Oh, I have a bad feeling about this.
If you're not a fan of traditional RPGs or turn-based battle systems, you're probably going to think that the combat here looks very boring. However, don't let that first impression fool you. Battles in KOTOR are tense and challenging, especially when you obtain new weapons, force powers, and other helpful abilities. You could travel with up to 2 allies and get into battles with large groups of enemies, switching control between characters to execute different actions. You could get very creative with how you combine attacks and shift control to characters that can devastate enemies at the right time. What's interesting is how you can pause time to make selections or plan out different strategies during combat. It's super helpful and vital in some parts of the game that include some bigger fights. I feel this is good and reimagines a lot of what we see often in JRPGs and other classic Western RPGs. Unfortunately, my biggest pet peeves with the combat are the random bugs that I ran into, as well as the difficulty spikes that happen throughout. Certain bugs involving movement occasionally happen here and there, but it's the difficulty spikes that will really mess up your experience. At one moment, you could be casually finishing side quests and defeating enemies for EXP, only to run into a randomly tough enemy and get wiped out. This can force you to redo certain areas if you don't save your game frequently. It's even more annoying how there's no checkpoint or retry option right after a battle that you fall in. You need to make sure that you're saving constantly before any battle, otherwise you might end up losing hours of gameplay to some random nonsense.
I don't believe that. And you're sounding like a separatist.
I really like the level of customization you have in this game, not only just with your character, but also your allies as well. There's so much equipment and different types of weapons and items you could find throughout the adventure, as well as also different force powers and abilities you come across as you level up that really change up the look and the personality of your character, as well as also how they're received as you're exploring all the different planets you go to. This stuff is awesome for an RPG that's supposed to be like really in-depth, and again, being made by classic BioWare. There's a lot of little details that really kind of come into play here and there in little moments you don't even first realize, just because you had like a certain type of like item on or a certain type of equipment, or you made certain decisions in one area and it affects another area completely, as well as also your affiliation with the light side or the dark side. There is a lot of customization here, and that in turn also affects your battle, like your actual combat abilities, whether you get light side powers to really kind of, stun enemies or damage them really heavily with the dark side of the force, as well as also the types of weapons you and your allies use. What I think is really cool is just how you can interplay between all 3 of your allies, or all 3 of your characters, I should say, between your main character and the 2 allies you bring with you. Whether you're going in there with melee attacks with lightsabers, while your partner backs you up with suppressing fire with lasers, or you have another character that's force sensitive, they can use force powers to kind of support both of you guys or affect the enemy as well. There's a lot to play around with here, and again, all this stuff is customizable, and I really appreciate that. Okay, with all of that to the side, let's talk about exploration, because I'm over here touting about how interesting and intriguing this galaxy is with all these different things I'm running into. But what specifically and what about it makes it so unique and so gravitating for a lot of RPG fans? If there's one thing I can say that KOTOR does incredibly well, it's building up a thriving galaxy. Granted, this takes place about 4,000 years before the movies. There's a ton of rich lore, provocative characters, and populated planets to get immersed in. You'll have a lot of side quests to complete outside of the main story, which is spread out across 7 different planets that you can visit. Each one has so much to do that you'll end up spending hours exploring around. Everything from the shady underworlds of Taurus and Tatooine, to the bright views of Kashyyyk and the mystic areas of Dantooine. The game just oozes personality in every environment, despite looking a little dated by today's standards.
What?
The only negative thing I have to say is it takes way too long to walk from place to place within each area you visit. Although I blame that on the technology of the era, I do wish there was some way to move around faster. Like in any RPG, it takes time before you have the freedom to travel between planets, but the build up to it is very well done and directly related to the main story. I love seeing so many NPCs that you can interact with and how much dialogue you can have with them. Because this is a BioWare RPG, you have many options during interactions that could change up your light side or dark side affinity. This can affect the way that you're viewed by other characters you encounter, whether friendly or hostile. When you level up, you could spend skill points on stats like Charisma and Force abilities that allow you to persuade people during conversations, even going as far as to use the Force to manipulate their minds. This is the stuff that BioWare RPGs are praised for, and it's perfect for this context. The coolest part is how the outcome of everything could be so radically different depending on your actions. You might not see the same conversation with a character or even the same events occur if you replay the game with different choices and a different affinity. You can honestly go nuts playing around to see how many permutations there are within every location. Whether you're more on the light side or the dark side, you could do things like avoid battles and be rewarded based on your clever choices, and yet you could also make things action-packed or even more challenging if you make different choices from there. This is fantastic and something that very few other RPGs really get right. I totally see exactly why so many people love this. Everything that happens within KOTOR is designed to make you feel completely immersed within this universe, and your decisions within it really mean something.
Kipuna, Bonana Kichu, Kinba Mulera Dwana. Watawama Muliri, Kin Kun.
One thing that I will mention that does kind of suck and at least affected my experience was the bugs that I ran into that did affect some of the scenarios and side quests I was trying to finish. It just gets a little bit annoying where I'm doing everything right and because of one random bug where a character doesn't recognize a certain element that's supposed to be there, or if I have a certain type of equipment that's supposed to affect everybody around me and it doesn't really have that type of effect, that is a real shame because in instances like that I had to redo like certain amount of like gameplay that I did beforehand, and that's just really annoying, especially when you're so immersed with everything else going on within the game in an RPG like this anyway. And I noted a couple different ones that happened in my experience, the biggest one being the one with the sand people, where you have to dress as one of the sand people and that way it'll allow you to pass through a certain area. Apparently that's like a really big bug in most versions of the game. It's easily solvable, but it's still annoying that it's there because bugs like that really shouldn't be there. They should be ironed out before the game gets released. But alas, this game is pretty old and there's been some workarounds here and there, especially on the PC version with mods. But regardless though, once I got past that, everything was all gravy. Who would have thought that the Old Republic would be so intriguing for Star Wars fans in a big way, let alone RPG fans who haven't always dabbled in a galaxy far, far away. But after looking over everything here, can I recommend that you play Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic on any platform? Yes. Although I do have some valid criticisms that point out the age of this game. The bugs and the difficulty spikes could be a real damper at times, but I could definitively say that this is a must-play for anyone that loves RPGs. Even if you think you're someone who only likes JRPGs, or if you feel you're not that big of a Star Wars fan, I would say anybody who just likes the genre will really come to love the high quality of immersion, world building, and consequences that you see in this galaxy. Give it a try sometime, and you'll come to learn what I have learned. I'm happy to say that the Force is very strong with this one. And there you go, everyone. Those are my overall thoughts about Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. I'm so glad I finally got to sit down and play this game in full, because I totally understand where everybody is coming from now, saying that this is one of the best RPGs that anybody could play. And really what's cool about this is that you don't even need to be a big Star Wars fan to really get into this. Like I mentioned before, even if you don't consider yourself a fan of Star Wars, there's just so much in here already for RPG gamers to really appreciate and enjoy. There's just, again, the places to explore, the combat, like the customization, all these different things just work very well to make an awesome package of a game that just happens to take place in the Star Wars galaxy. And what's cool for us Star Wars fans is that even though it's reminiscent of what we know with the movies, it takes place in such a far off place away from them that offers all this new stuff that just works out so well. And I really appreciate that. On top of that, now that I finished this game, it works out great because we're going to get the Knights of the Old Republic remake that's going to happen on modern consoles. And I can't wait to see like how my experience with this original version, or at least this re-release version of the original, how that's going to work out well or make me appreciate whatever's going to go on with the KOTOR remake, especially since it's going to be completely modernized for today's day and age. Oh, I could just imagine how cool this is going to be. But regardless though, that's just my thoughts and opinions about Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic. Let me know your own thoughts about this game down below in the comments section. Tell me, are you a Star Wars fan or are you just an RPG fan? Do you like Knights of the Old Republic? Are you excited for the remake that's coming soon? Tell me about other games that are based on like an IP or a franchise that do something unique and interesting, kind of like how this game did for the Star Wars franchise, but kind of just go off in its own direction. Tell me about that stuff down below in the comments section. And of course, my fellow Jedi and Sith Padawans, may the Force be with us. Hey, thank you everyone for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it enough to check out some of my other videos I'll list here on the side in just a moment. Go ahead and subscribe to the channel to see new content that I post up as it goes out. You can also join my Patreon for early access to new videos and exclusive content you'll only see over there. Don't forget to join my Discord server via the link in the description too. There's a lot of great people who love gaming and make an amazing community in there that I know you'll love being part of. Hope to see you again real soon. Peace out and stay epic, everyone.